Hello and welcome to this brand new episode of Global Scan. Stay with us for the next half an hour as we bring you 360-degree view of the major developments across the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. The suspension of UK Parliament and following uproar against it seems to be leading the country to a major crisis ahead of Brexit. We'll find out what major countries are doing to lead citizens on the path of fitness and health. Also in the show ahead, updates on Hong Kong protests, raging Amazon forest fire, and the 75th year celebrations of the end of Nazi rule in France. All that and more. Let's begin with the headlines. UK reacts angrily as Queen approves Boris Johnson's plan to suspend UK Parliament. PM confirms the government will reopen Parliament with the Queen's speech on October 14th. Hong Kong on the edge. 3 leading Hong Kong pro-democracy activists arrested as government clamped down on wave of unrest in the city. Massive fires continue to burn unabated in Amazon rainforest. A surge of wildfires in Amazon marks 83% increase. Brazil bans legal burning for 60 days to fight fires. Indonesia plans to move its capital to Borneo Island from Jakarta. The new location has lower risk of natural disasters. And Paris celebrates 75th anniversary of liberation from the Nazis. The city marks the event with parade and ceremonies. Let's first take a stock of what is happening in the UK as the Parliament is suspended on request by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Nationwide protests have been planned in the UK as Queen Elizabeth accepted Prime Minister Boris Johnson's request to suspend the Parliament. The Prime Minister confirmed the government will reopen Parliament with the Queen's speech on October 14th, which has now received official approval from the Queen.
Forward a new legislative programme on crime, on hospitals, making sure that we have the education funding that we need. And there will be ample time on both sides of that crucial October the 17th summit. Ample time in Parliament for MPs to debate the EU, to debate Brexit and all the other issues. Ample time. We need to get on with our domestic agenda, and that's why we're announcing a Queen's speech for October the 14th.
In the boldest step since becoming Prime Minister last month, Johnson has enraged the opponents by ordering suspension of Parliament for almost a month.
The Prime Minister is clear that he wants to use a new parliamentary session in order to ensure that the people's priorities are met. But it's also the case that parliamentarians will have plenty of time when we come back next week to debate Brexit. They'll have plenty of time before the European Council in October to debate Brexit, and they'll have plenty of time to vote on and to reflect their views on Brexit after that European Council, at which we hope to get a deal. Parliament has spent the last 3 years talking about Brexit.
And calls for protests come as petition against suspending Parliament has racked up more than 1 million signatures, with thousands of names being added by the minute. Opposition MPs argued that suspension of Parliament wouldn't leave them enough time to block a no-deal Brexit, while Commons Speaker John Bercow calling the move a constitutional outrage. Demonstrators gathered outside Britain's Houses of Parliament after Prime Minister Boris Johnson moved to suspend Parliament for more than a month before the October 31st Brexit deadline. Meanwhile, former Finance Minister Philip Hammond said that many lawmakers opposed to a no-deal Brexit had wanted to wait until later in September to see whether Johnson would be successful in his bid to negotiate a new Brexit deal before taking action.
Well, it's profoundly undemocratic. At a time of national crisis, Parliament must be able to meet, to hold the government to account, to represent our constituents, the electorate up and down the country, and it is profoundly undemocratic to shut Parliament down, to stop it doing its job at a time of national crisis like this.
And in the latest development, Prime Minister Boris Johnson challenged the opponents of Brexit in Parliament. The ruling government has dared them to collapse the government or change the law if they wanted to thwart Britain's exit from the European Union. More than 3 years since the Brexit referendum, the United Kingdom is heading towards its gravest constitutional crisis in decades, and a showdown with the EU over Brexit due in just 63 days' time. And now to talk about the UK Parliament suspension crisis and the crisis that has followed from there, the opposition. Joining me in the studio is a special guest, Mr. Harsh Vardhan Pant, international affairs expert. Welcome, sir, to our studio. To begin with, how do you see this aggressive stance that the latest development is from the UK taken by Prime Minister Boris Johnson, almost challenging the opponents that you bring down the government if you don't agree with me?
See, I think Mr. Johnson has come to office with a very basic mandate that he needs to deliver on Brexit. And he has been quite insistent that whether he gets a deal or there is a no deal, Britain would be out of the EU on 31st of October, which is the last day, final day before anything, before the relationship with the EU ends automatically. Right. So therefore, for him, it's imperative that he makes certain bold decisions. But I think he's also desperate times call for desperate measures, and I think this is one of those measures in desperation that he has taken, because clearly in Parliament the fault lines have not moved. Right. So there is nothing that he can do to change the views of others, nor can others change his views about Brexit. And clearly he has taken up the gauntlet, and he is now making a case that he will run with it, and he will because he has the authority to prorogue or to suspend the Parliament, he will do it and make sure that the opponents get as less a time as possible to debate and discuss the implications. But
the reason that he gives, that Boris Johnson has given, is that he needs time to focus on the other development agenda, other issues that have been pending amidst Brexit discussions. Opponents, as you mentioned, they'll be left with hardly any time to debate further on the Brexit. How do you see this development?
Well, I think he is actually he's trying to make a case that, look, this is all for other issues. Let's concentrate on other issues, and the Queen can, of course, will lay out her agenda, or the government's agenda, whenever she delivers her speech, which happens at the beginning of every new session, of every new annual session of Parliament. But I think the fundamental reality is that October 31st will be the deadline, and so his actions are primarily aimed and timed towards that end. And therefore his opponents also know this. They know that if he has that space, then perhaps they will end up in a situation where they are on the losing side. That means that Britain will be out of the UK with a no deal, with enormous implications, given that almost every economic forecaster tells us that it will be disastrous for British economy. Right. So clearly the stakes are very high, politically, economically, as well as I think for British own internal politics. As we know that a number of Conservatives are very unhappy. You were showing a clip of Philip Hammond, the ex-Foreign Secretary, who has been very, very categorical that this is a bad move. Many of the Conservative leaders have resigned. So there is great turmoil within all political parties, and I think this is a move that also tells you something which is very, which is quite extraordinary about the political moment in Britain, that Britain is at an inflection point both internally as well as in its relations with the EU.
Sir, can you help us simplify the concept of no-deal Brexit? Given that we've seen the Brexit debates have seen a beginning and end of a tenure of a Prime Minister, Theresa May could not successfully deliver the Brexit deal. What are the challenges, hurdles that May face that also stand true for Boris Johnson?
Almost the same hurdles. I think nothing within the Parliament has moved. Theresa May got a deal from the European Union, from Brussels, which she thought was the best possible deal that she could get, and which, hindsight, it seems, was actually the best possible deal that the European Union will give to Britain. Now she went to the Parliament and she said, well, just let's ratify this and let's move on. But neither did she get the support from her own party, Conservatives. A lot of the Conservative backbenchers, including Mr. Johnson, who resigned because of the deal, supported her, nor did she get support from the Labour Party, which is the opposition. Now the result is that because of the internal turmoil in the Conservatives, Mr. Johnson is now at the helm, supported by the Tory backbenchers who want Brexit and who are in the majority. But clearly, if tomorrow he says there is a no-deal Brexit, a number of Tories, a number of Conservative Party leaders, I'm told around 40, who are willing to vote with the Labour Party to scuttle Mr. Johnson's no-deal Brexit. So we are at the same position in the Parliament. There is no move anywhere from one side to the other. And I think what would be the reality for Britain, that on 31st of October it will get out. If there is a no deal, then the relationship with the EU will end. Britain's engagement with the EU in terms of the free trade agreement will end, and so Britain will be left out.
And to understand it clearly, sir, whether or not the Parliament can come together to vote on a deal, Britain will have to exit EU by 31st of October. There is no sort of rethinking of that deadline anymore.
No. So clearly, if you have to challenge the deadline, you have to go back to the basics and say, well, let's do another referendum, or let's get out of the Brexit almost in totality, which is an equally complicated procedure. So I think we are heading for a moment where something dramatic is going to happen on 31st October, whether there is a deal or no deal with the European Union as far as Britain is concerned.
Right, and reflecting on the large-scale protests that are taking place in the UK by the opposition and by the others, help us also understand the sort of powers that the opposition MPs exercise. Can they approach the Queen? Can this suspension be cancelled? Are such options available to the people who are protesting, including the MPs?
Well, I think there are very limited options at the moment. The Prime Minister's cabinet, it's a parliamentary system of government where the cabinet is powerful. It advises the Queen to make certain decisions about suspension or about dissolving the Parliament. Now, in this case, the cabinet decided that they needed to suspend it, and they advised the Queen. Queen, as a constitutional authority, had to abide by the decision of the cabinet, which she did. Now, the question for the opposition is, what can they do now to show their displeasure? And a lot of the protest movements that are happening on the streets actually are about showcasing that anger. And also, there is a campaign of signature campaign going on, which has seen a number of million signatures already. So I think there is a sense that maybe this outrage will be reflected and will somehow tame Mr. Johnson's instincts, which I think is very unlikely, because he is in office primarily because of his support for a Brexit, whether there is a deal or no deal. And I think that's why there is a lot of support for him within the Tory backbenchers, and that means that he had to take this drastic measure, because without this drastic measure, he won't be able to sustain the kind of policy measure about Brexit that he's contemplating, which is that even if he doesn't get a deal by 31st of October, he wants Britain to be out of Brussels, out of European Union.
Right, so and to reflect upon the sort of chaos and confusion that seems to be prevailing in the UK. If we just go back in time, 2016, when the Brexit vote took place and UK decided to exit the European Union, and to this date, when the Parliament hasn't been able to come to any sort of a consensus on what should be the ideal deal. Also, how have you seen UK, the socio-economic reality of the country, changing in these 3 years? The confusion that has prevailed, as I mentioned, Prime Minister came and went while UK was trying to get an appropriate deal. How has the country really done while debating and discussing the Brexit deal?
I think this, when historians would look back, they would look at this phase in British politics as one of the defining phases in British political life, because Britain's entire future now depends on how they resolve this matter over the next almost 6 to 7 weeks. And I think what has happened since the referendum and remember, let's remember that it was David Cameron's prime ministership under whom referendum happened. After he resigned, he had to resign after the referendum. Then Theresa May came, she failed, and then she resigned. And now Mr. Johnson is there. So the Tories, the Conservatives, basically this was an internal issue for the Conservatives, where there's a lot of opposition. There has been a lot of traditional opposition to the European Union, and that was reflected in the referendum, in the results of the referendum. And now the British polity is completely in disarray. British engagement with the European Union in disarray. Entire British foreign policy is in disarray. British economy is in disarray. So I think the question for Britain today is what can they salvage from the ruins of Brexit. And I think that's a big policy question that faces not only Mr. Johnson but his successors for a long time to come.
All right, we'll have to wait and watch what the shape that the protests take forward and what happens on the 31st of October. On that note, sir, thanks very much for joining us with those insights on the crisis underway in the UK. Thanks very much. Moving on from protest in UK, let's now turn attention to the ongoing protest in Hong Kong. Hong Kong pro-democracy activists Joshua Wong and Agnes Chow were arrested on suspicion of organizing illegal protest as authorities clamped down on a wave of unrest that has plunged the city into its biggest political crisis in more than 2 decades. The two were arrested hours after independence activist Andy Sham was arrested at the city's airport. Meanwhile, Joshua Wong's political party says authorities are trying to intimidate and spread white terror with the arrests.
He is arrested by the law of the inciting unlawful assembly, organizing unlawful assembly, and taking part into the unlawful assembly. And another demonstrations member, Agnes Chow, are being arrested of inciting unlawful assembly. And both of them are now in the Wan Chai Police Headquarters. And we believe that the high-profile arrest before the 31st of August protest is because they want to spread white terror towards the Hong Kong protester and the Hong Konger.
And moving on now to our next big story that has caught the global attention. The Amazon, which is the largest and the most biodiverse tract of tropical rainforest in the world, is currently suffering the worst forest fire blazes in the recent years. Continuous smoke has been billowing from the raging wildfires in the usually dense and green Amazon. It is leaving behind a trail of charred devastation that has left deep scars in the world's largest rainforest. The surge of wildfires in Amazon marks an 83% increase over the same period last year and is the highest since the year 2010. Meanwhile, Brazil's government has published a decree that prohibits the use of fire to clear land or for crops and cattle grazing in Amazon region for at least a couple of months. The blaze that has been going on for more than 3 weeks has captured the world's attention and prompted an outcry over deforestation and land use in the biodiverse region. However, attempts by the international community to deal with the Amazon catastrophe has failed to yield any result so far. Moving on, United States has signed a pact with El Salvador on migration and security, taking ahead President Donald Trump's pledge to curb migrant flows into the United States. Acting U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAllen and El Salvador's Minister of Justice and Security signed the letter of intent, which calls for heightened collaboration between law enforcement, including more sharing of information such as biometric data, as well as boosting economic development in El Salvador.
The United States has already seen significant progress from your efforts. Since your inauguration just 3 months ago, CBP has observed a 60% decrease in crossings at the U.S. southwest border for individuals from El Salvador, demonstrating the success of your initiatives on both security and economic opportunity.
Indonesia is planning to move its capital to Borneo Island from Jakarta. Indonesian President Joko Widodo announced early this week. The new capital, which does not yet have a name, would be located in Borneo's East Kalimantan province, near the existing Samarinda city and the port city of Balikpapan. The new location has a lower risk of natural disasters. The decision to move the capital away from Jakarta has been made, taking cognizance of the city's vulnerability to floods, which is also sinking due to subsidence caused by millions of residents using up the groundwater. Unveiling site of the new capital, President Joko Widodo outlined 3 benefits of shifting to Borneo, saying that the new capital is located in the center of the island country and is close to other developed cities.
The place has minimum risk of natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, tsunami, forest fire, volcanoes and landslides. Secondly, the location is strategic as it is located in the center of Indonesia. And thirdly, it is close to other developed cities.
Malaysia and Vietnam have signed an agreement to boost maritime cooperation between the two countries. The countries signed the agreement to work towards a memorandum of understanding on cooperation on law enforcing and search and rescue at sea. The agreement was signed by Vietnamese Deputy Defence Minister Phan Van Giang and Malaysian Minister of Foreign Affairs Saifuddin Abdullah, and was witnessed by Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad and his Vietnamese counterpart Nguyen Xuan Phuc. The Malaysian Prime Minister said that the big powers have taken the law into their own hands and doing things that are contrary to international understanding.
Many countries are affected because the big powers take the law into their own hands and they do things which are contrary to their stand on international management of international relations. We also talk on overlapping claims with regard to the continental shelf, and we believe that such disputes should be settled in a peaceful manner through negotiation, through arbitration, and possibly through a court of law.
The world is experiencing a measles epidemic presently, as the number of global cases of measles this year is 3 times higher than the last year. The World Health Organization has reported these figures. According to WHO, nearly 3,65,000 cases have been reported globally this year. With over 1,55,000 cases, Democratic Republic of Congo has recorded the biggest outbreak of the disease, followed by Madagascar and Ukraine. Europe has lost ground too, with 4 countries stripped off their measles-free status in 2018. Moreover, in 53 countries of Europe, 90,000 measles cases have been reported in the first half of this year. This is more than that of all of 2018. The countries are Albania, Czech Republic, Greece and Britain. The United States has also recorded over 1,200 measles cases across 30 states in its worst outbreak since 1992.
$64,000 cases have been reported to WHO from the regions. That number, which is only for cases up through August, is the highest number of measles cases reported globally in any year since 2006, and we have not completed the year yet. This is almost 3 times as many cases reported as the same time last year.
On to our special coverage now. Fit India movement kick-started on Thursday by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In his address, he spoke about how this movement is in line with similar focus and priority according to public fitness across the world. Let's take a look at what the different countries are doing to make their citizens active and healthy. We're going to look at the best practices by different countries. Let's begin with that. Let's begin first with China. We'll be focused on the best practices across the country. China, Healthy China 2030 is the program of the Chinese. In 2016, Healthy China 2030 blueprint was released by the country. It is aiming at improving the fitness level, covers public health services and the medical industry. So a multi-pronged initiative by China. And we're looking at the ways in which the Chinese, the highest population country, is dealing with fitness issues. It covers environment management, food and drug safety. So we see all the factors which contribute to fitness are taken into account. And they talk about simple steps. Engaging in 30 minutes of fitness activities at least 3 times a week is what the circular for fitness says. And it says that if you can't do that, you undertake a similar exercise load, which leads to a similar burning of calories. So this is what is taking place in China. Walk 6,000 to 10,000 steps every day. This is the minimum that you can do to achieve a level of fitness. This is according to the plan of Healthy China 2030. By 2030, 90% of school venues are going to be open to public. So there's going to be more infrastructure available for citizens, not just school students, to work towards healthness. Let's go to America from China. Sports for all. So using sports as a mission to increase sports participation among youth, also taking it as a road to fitness. Less than half the adolescents, the report says, meet 60 minutes play a day mark. So more than 50% of the youngsters don't even play for an hour in the US. And promotion of healthy and active lifestyle for all Americans is the vision for the Sports for All initiative by the United States. And this is how it's promoting fitness and gaining benefits from associated with sport participation. Again, using sports as a medium to achieve the minimum level of fitness that is required. The core theme is Sports for All, Play for Life. So there's no really age to pick up a game or a sport, not for medals, but for fitness is the vision with which it works. Encouraging people of all ages, gender, ability levels and backgrounds, not just for children or youth, people of all age group. In fact, middle age has been asked to focus on it. Let's move to Australia. National Sports Plan, again another country using sports as a way to promote fitness. The first National Sports Plan, again aiming to achieve the targets by 2030. Plan sport and physical activity till the deadline of 2030 over the next decade. It wants to use sports as a medium to achieve fitness, building a more active Australia. All these developed countries, while innovation takes place there's also lethargy amongst the population that has been reported greatly. Reduce inactivity amongst the Australians by at least 15% by 2030. So that's also an ambition with which the country is moving forward, and engage people in physical activity at every stage of life, like America and other countries, not just youth and children, but people of all age groups, middle age and elderly as well. Partnership with sporting physical activity community. Again, we see how different institutions are also brought into the picture so that the whole approach can be holistic. We are also talking about tech, education and corporate community. So all different communities in the country can work together to achieve the goal of fitness. Let's talk about Europe. We're going to Germany now. Fit instead of fat. Now in 2007, way back in 2007, the German government launched a plan to cut the fat level and increase fitness. Germany has the highest number of overweight people in Europe. That's what the study said. So by 2020, the results we'll get to know. Fit instead of fat action plan was introduced, and in a year's time, we'll know what the outcome has been on this very ambitious initiative. Improving the quality of food in schools and hospitals. And nutrition is a way in which Germany is trying to ensure that people in the country are fit. Boosting exercise levels among children, encouraging them to not just study and be tech giants, as Germans often are, but also work on fitness. Let's talk about United Kingdom from Germany. Towards a healthy nation, that's the vision with which it's working. Sports England strategy for 2016-2021. It's a 5-year strategy, again using sports as a means. It looks beyond simple participation to how sports can change lives. So not just for medals, but also to achieve fitness. It has tripled the amount of investment that is there in tackling inactivity and to boost fitness levels in the country, so the manner in which people can be engaged. The target is 28% of people who do less than 30 minutes of exercise per week. Huge percentage who are not even exercising for 30 minutes are the target. The focus also on at least active groups, women, disabled, weaker sections. Again, as I mentioned, not just youth and children across the world, people are focusing on other groups as well. Dedicated funding to ensure fitness levels for children from a young age to make sure they grow into healthy adults. So those are some of the ways in which the world today is focusing on fitness. India is also following the same trend, and Prime Minister spoke about that on a Thursday, and we'll have to wait and watch how we can inculcate the best practices from across the world. Well, moving on to our next and the final story. France celebrated 75th anniversary of its victory over the rule of notorious Nazi leader Adolf Hitler this week with a parade in 1940s dress. Delighting the onlookers who took part in the joyous commemoration, the parade, which began at Port d'Orléans, ended at Place d'Enfant Rochereau in Paris. It saw men in Allied uniforms driving in tanks, wartime military vehicles to cheer from the surrounding crowds. Around 2 million Parisians assembled on Champs-Élysées the same day for celebration, parade with de Gaulle marching in the forefront. And we're leaving you with these glimpses of the celebrations. Namaskar.